Just let each other like a trying to change What do you want? Can I help you? I guess not. I remember when there was a time, up and out, it never really feels like enough. Maybe of it. I just get really tired. She didn't. She said she didn't either. I said I didn't either. I'm not sure what I'm looking for now. Maybe you, maybe me.
Wow, that was really awesome. Wow. Hi, everyone out there. My name is Ife, and I'm here today with Lane Marie Williams, the director of the film we just watched, and Campbell O'Hare, I believe. You're the leading
right.
actress in this. Yes. This was amazing. I really enjoyed it. And I understand everyone else got a chance to watch it online. So if you're just joining us, you can still watch it on It's a Short. Feel free to, take a few minutes, even watch it right now. So, yeah. So why don't we just start off with, a little bit of basics. Why don't you introduce yourselves and tell us how you guys came about with this project? How did you get started or get involved? Lane, you want to get
Yeah,
started?
sure thing. So I'm Marie Williams. I'm a director and writer and also producer. Campbell O'Hare happens to be like my best friend, and she's also a phenomenal actress. We've known each other for a very long time, since our art school days. And long story short, she came and visited me in Chicago a couple winters ago, and I planned to do a film shoot with her while she was there. And we just kind of played around and explored some fun stuff together.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm Campbell. I'm an actor based in Philadelphia. And yeah, Lane Marie and I met 10 years ago now. And back when we were in college together, we would just run around with our cameras and make stuff up. And so this project felt like harkening back to those early days. This was just one of the days that we spent together on a visit. We just like shot all of this stuff and took the subway all around Chicago. And then it was an interesting like retroactive process where all of the voiceover and all of the captioning and any storyline that came later in post-production, because on the day we were just finding images and finding movement.
Wow. And did you say you filmed this a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was it must have been like, let's see, like June 2018, something like that. So yeah, and the post-production process with it took some time because it was sort of a like our producer Amy Powell and our editor colorist the fabulous Anna Christian, and then music designed by Kate Rappel. We all really had this like beautiful, and also our director of photography, Alex Halstead, can't forget him. We really had this beautiful collaboration together where the movie just kind of revealed what it needed and wanted to be along the way. And I see this piece as a visual diary entry. And I think that's something that makes it like really intimate and powerful. And I'm sure as time goes on, something that Campbell and I both look back at in our careers with hopefully a lot of fondness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you guys filmed this a few years ago because it really summarized, I think, a feeling a lot of us are identifying with right now. It seems to be, kind of frustration, a little bit of anger or even resentment. There's isolation. There's, kind of this, I'm not sure if she's alone, but there's a feeling of aloneness or loneliness. So maybe you could kind of talk about, why this is such a timely film, even though it was something you worked on in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the film definitely looks at imposter syndrome in particular. That was something that I really wanted to explore with, Campbell's character, who we ended up naming Hummer, is just trying to explore all these different masks and identities and who is she, who isn't she. And she's really kind of like on this search for herself. And I think it definitely deals with like mental health in like ways I didn't realize until now. And I think that's part of what is so powerful about it being a visual diary entry is like I myself, like I'm a poet. And so I was exploring a lot of those themes and, definitely dealing with some heartbreak and just things along the way that I feel like that day that we shot, it's amazing how the movements and the the things that we had Campbell do really attributed to that narrative.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Campbell, what do you think about that day? Do you remember what you were feeling, or how that kind of resonates now?
Yeah, well, when you were just talking, Lane Marie, something that feels inherent and authentic to the film is that on the day, Lane Marie was like, I want to make you feel sexy. I want you to move. Like, it's just going to be you. I'm just going to point the camera at you and ask you to do stuff. And so, like, when I watched that ending part, it was like, ooh, there's a piece of glass over there. Go scream into it. Mm-hmm. And so there's literally me in the making of the film is being like, girding herself to go and be like, yeah, I can climb up on this bridge and feel myself. And I feel like our experience of making the film and just being like, yeah, we can do this. We can just make something. Mm-hmm. And me grappling with myself, like my own physical self being on camera, is not unlike the bigger picture of whatever the character is going through, whatever revealing process and whatever reckoning she's going through with herself, I think is reflective of me and Lane Marie in that moment.
Yeah, I get that kind of impression that there's a bit of a transition or kind of a transformation. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if I asked this specifically, but what was kind of the inspiration behind this, and what are you hoping that the audience can take away from it?
It's definitely one of those pieces that I think when people, like when it first had its premiere at the Adirondack Film Festival, a couple came up to me afterwards and were like, what does it mean? And I was like, what do you think it means? It's really one of those pieces. So I hesitate to say too much. Mm-hmm. I think that it's really a piece that is for the beholder. They can put whatever meaning into it they feel. Mm-hmm. And that was what I was exploring at the time too. And, a lot of like the more narrative pieces that I do, I'm like, well, a lot of it has to do with like the nitty gritty of like, what are we trying to achieve, or what questions are we trying to ask, or who's our audience? And this is just one of those pieces that doesn't have to do all those things. And I think, again, that's part of what makes it powerful. It's okay that it's a little bit of an experimental mess, that I think we need more of that in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do like experimental. That's kind of my favorite thing. Mm-hmm. You mentioned, about having gone from narrative filmmaking to wanting to, try something a little bit more experimental. Can you talk about your journey as a filmmaker and what it's been like for you to kind of arrive at wanting to do something more experimental? What does that, need that you're trying to address even as a filmmaker?
Well, I actually started out as an experimental filmmaker and then moved into the more narrative world. So I think experimental work comes very naturally to me. I've actually had to work harder at building narratives and focusing on narratives and what's the through line here and all that stuff. But I mean, as Campbell said, when we both graduated early from art school, we just had more time on our hands. And so we just started making films together. And so, I have a lot of gratitude for starting out as a guerrilla filmmaker. I feel like a lot of people don't know that about me. So it really was just like a thing of like, we ran around with like Canon power shots and just made stuff because we had to, and then I've just kind of built up to the point that I am now, but it didn't happen overnight. But I'm really thankful for like the grassroots experimental art house, life that I come from.
Yeah.
Yes. Campbell, what about you? What's been your journey in the film world?
Oh man, sparse. I don't know. I'm mostly work in theater. And so that when I do work in film, it's a challenge to, like, my relationship with the camera as a challenge. But Yeah, I don't know. This one felt, when I watch it back, I'm like looking at myself being like, let it rip. I feel like that's what I take away from this moving forward is I'm like, man, what have we got to lose? We're just making stuff. Let it rip. Like, let the movement be crazy. Let the metaphors be like bananas. And yeah, I look back on, our early days filmmaking together was me and Lane Marie, like sleeping in the same bed in her studio apartment and then waking up at dawn and being like, great, how do we make blood out of cherry syrup and like dirt? And I think that's the good stuff. I think that as adults, and like working in the arts, there's a lot of like, ooh, when I just crest this hill, or like, ooh, if I can just get to that next career thing. But it's just, when I look around, I'm like, oh, my peers are the most inspiring people to me. I just don't have to reach that far. And the trust, I think that the trust that we have is pretty magical.
Wow. That's interesting too. I think there's a level of trust that's visible in the film as well. I think about the scene where you're kind of dancing on the street right there. Like I said, I'm not sure if there was anyone around, but it definitely has this level of intimacy that is kind of like you're saying, letting it go, just being able to bare your soul, and that is often very hard to do, not only in society but alone sometimes. Again, as some people have maybe realized during this time that we are spending a lot of time alone. I don't know, maybe you could talk a little bit about kind of your lens, Lane Marie, as a filmmaker that's wanting to tell some stories that are maybe not necessarily narrative driven, or that kind of focus on outside stories or outsider stories. What do you think is the necessity of these sort of experimental films, if you will?
Yeah, I think like one thing that I've realized along the way, because a lot of the stuff I'm working on right now is narrative focused, but having the working on continuing to work on experimental works is vital to my lifeblood. Because if I'm only, working as like a hired gun, or meaning like working on other people's projects, or, only just pumping out narratives, I feel like less in touch with my roots. So I actually just bought a brand new little camcorder that I'm very excited about, and with the intention of I don't have to rely on anyone else or anything else. I can just run around and shoot some stuff and edit some stuff for me. And so that I think is just the biggest thing that I'm always like, gut checking in on is like, am I still being authentic to like making sure that I'm creating because I need to, not just because of where it's going to get me next, or the money I'm going to make, or I'm going to get to work with this name talent. So I hope to carry that with me forever and to continue to make movies like Failed Tractate, because it is really fulfilling. And then if people love it or they hate it, cool, Yeah, it's all good stuff.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good place for us to kind of open it up to some of our audience. I see we have a couple of questions. So the first question, it looks like, is how did you decide on the name of the film? So you just kind of mentioned that Veiled. I didn't want to say it wrong. Veiled Tractate. So what's you always pick really interesting titles. So tell us, what does that mean, and why did you choose it?
Yeah, well, tractate is like a treaty. It's like a treaty. It's something that's being written and presented. So that's what tractate means. And then veiled, meaning like masked or disguised, or incognito is another word that's featured at the very beginning of the film. So essentially, like what the title is meant to represent is like a secret. It's like a secret diary with oneself.
Oh yeah. That's really interesting. So I know you kind of mentioned that actually, that you kind of see it as like a diary entry. So, I'm just curious again, did you choose that name previously, or what made you kind of choose that name now? Why do you think that's relevant to today? I don't know. It just seems so spot on. I'm just like, how did you come up with that?
It came to me like after, like in the midst of writing the voiceovers for it. And I've got some document somewhere in Google Drive where I was like exploring all the different titles. And I think I wrote Veiled and Tractate in the list, and then I just like put them together. So yeah, I mean, it was a very organic process. It just kind of, the tone and like what I was trying to say and where I was at, and how vulnerable and intimate this piece was for me, for a variety of reasons, even just Campbell being in it, I wanted something that represented all those things.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Our next question is, what is your 3 favorite parts of filmmaking, and what is the most challenging? So this is from our audience, so as filmmakers, what is your favorite part? Maybe a couple of parts are your favorite. And what do you find most challenging?
My favorite part is being on set and actually like making the magic happen, and, running around, maybe it's hour 11 and, we're like pulling up the martini shot and I've had 5 cups of coffee and 12 people in my face in the past hour. And it's just magical. You're playing pretend with a bunch of really cool, tech. And it really like checks off all the boxes for me in a lot of different ways. Like there's so even though it's really hard, and I totally have moments where I'm like, why am I doing this? Right. On a personal level, it really like checks all the boxes for things that I like enjoy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Campbell? I know you said you've only done a few things with film, but what's been your experience like? What's challenging? What have you been enjoying with filmmaking?
For me as an actor, it's also when it's the greatest game of pretend, because it's when it's you, because I'm used to working on stage. It's like, oh, I don't have to turn out. I don't have to offer anything to the audience. Everything that I have to offer is just for my scene partner, and that feels so exciting. Mm-hmm. And then I just worked on a film in the fall on location where it was like, when your character turns back and looks at the stars, you are really looking at the stars. And like when you touch there's grass under your feet, the things that, you don't, it is the greatest game of pretend. It's like, it's not stage props, it's the thing. Mm-hmm. And I just think that that's super, super cool.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. I mean, someone asked again what were some challenges, but I want to make it specific. When you were actually making this film, you mentioned that you just kind of filmed, not sure what the final outcome would be. What were some of your challenges in editing? How do you actually come away with this final product without having something kind of set in advance?
Well, I mean, honestly, I had a really great team. Our team was so good and so like patient with this process, and just like yes-anded me all the way through. And we had a lot of meetings where we would be like, okay, so like, well, this is missing and this needs that, and we did do a pickup shoot date to try and like create that through line a little bit more. And actually, this is like a fun trivia thing. The hands and the legs and the washing machine are me. Mm-hmm. And so the hands writing on the mannequin head. And it would have been Campbell, but she was back in Philadelphia. So it had to be me. And I think that was probably the most challenging aspect, because it was like, okay, great, now we have all this like stunning footage, which I had planned beforehand. Like I knew like what we were going to do. But, you know, making it all come together and not just be beautiful pieces individually was the challenge. I'd say the greatest challenge.
Yeah, editing, that's a real challenge, definitely. So one of our another audience questions is what are you guys working on right now, and how can people follow and support you?
Oh, cool. Well, I'm a company member at the Wilma Theater, at the Wilma Theater on Instagram and all the things. But I was in a film that the Wilma produced in the fall called Heroes of the Fourth Turning, which I hope will have another viewing process at some point. And then I was just COVID safety officer on another film set through the Wilma Theater for a film that'll be premiering in about a month called Fat Ham. If anybody would like to keep an eye out for Fat Ham, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. And then feel free to share your social media or something, you know, down in the messages. That way people can also follow you online. Lane Marie, what about you? What are you working on these days, or, you know, currently? And how can people follow and support you?
Yeah. So I just wrapped what we're hoping to get picked up TV series, which is called Zen Room. So we shot the pilot for that in Chicago, like last week. I don't even know, recently. And then I'm working on a feature right now, which I can't say a whole lot about, but I will say that it is a Christmas movie. And it's also shooting in Chicago. So I'm like deep in callbacks and things like that. And then I'm just in development for, you know, development, various stages of pre-production for a couple of other features and episodics.
Yeah. We're writing a film together.
Oh yeah, we are.
Me, Maria and I are writing a film.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
just because, why not?
And I think, you know, Veiled Tractate is one of the reasons I think the benefits of Veiled Tractate too is being able, especially as we're, you know, once we continue to get our script in a place where we're putting it in front of investors and things like that, is being able to point to Veiled Tractate and show, you know, what we're capable of. So I think, again, that's one of the benefits of something like that. It's a proof of concept in a lot of ways, especially because the film that Campbell and I are working on is a horror. It's an Irish horror movie. So, you know, Veiled Tractate, I think, is not that far off.
Okay, wow, that's exciting. I love a good horror movie too, especially when you tie in real life scary things. I love that. Definitely. So just to reiterate, to kind of follow up to that about some of the things that you guys are working on right now, what has it been like working with COVID? Has it affected your work or your process or projects? You know, what's been the effect of the last year kind of on your, you know, your business? I'm in the distribution business, so we're like depending upon the production, and, you know, it's been very slow for us. So, you know, tell us what it's been like for you guys.
Yeah. I mean, it's been hard. It's been really hard. Budgets are now, you know, twice as expensive. It's harder to get projects off the ground. You have to get tested multiple times, depending on how the shoot is. Directing in a mask is extremely difficult. Definitely not my favorite. And then also just, you know, you have to be more cognizant about like staying further away from people than maybe feels natural sometimes. And, you know, it's a new world. And I think in a lot of ways there's positive things there, but it's definitely been challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. I work in theater, so my whole industry closed all of a sudden. We had, you know, about 1 year ago exactly, we had our first preview for a production that I was working on. And after first preview, we closed completely. And it was, I mean, a shock. And so I'm just grateful that I work with folks who are like, we're just going to pivot. We're just going to find a way through. Yeah. And so a bunch of theater actors started learning how to work on camera. And yeah, it was a bananas way to work. We rehearsed over Zoom for 2 weeks in total isolation, tested, and then we all went on location for 3 weeks, getting tested every 3 days. And that's the way we operated the last film that we did too. And yeah, it's shocking how many things are like surprisingly emotional. Like the first time the actors get to take off their masks, and it's like, oh, I'm acting to your face now, and I'm gonna burst into tears immediately.
Yeah.
All of those little things that were just like our day-to-day jobs. It's like, you mean I get to touch your arm? I mean, that's the exquisite thing about it, is all of these little things that we have brand new appreciation for. But yeah, it's I have desperate longing to be back in the room with people on a daily basis. I think everybody does.
Definitely. I think a lot of people have actually really depended upon films and television during this time. If not for escapism, for, an actual glimpse at reality. What has been the response of actually screening your film or showing it? You mentioned that it was in a festival previously, or premiered in a festival. Have you heard any feedback or, comments and thoughts from audiences that have seen the film?
Yeah, I mean, it's now in a place where I just kind of decided, because of COVID and everything, because we were going to have a couple other in-person screenings, to just go ahead and distribute it online, because there was like enough interest that I was like, okay, cool. Like, we just go ahead and put it out there for the world. We made it in 2018. Like, it's time, so it's available on opprime.tv. And then also, following this premiere it's a short, it'll be available on their platform. I'm also, looking for other avenues. I'd love to get it on Amazon Prime. That's one that I'm really interested in. Yeah, I mean, people's feedback, I mean, I couldn't tell on here or not, but there's subtitles on the film. So I feel like, oh gosh, it's just not the same not being able to be like with the audience, and having their reactions. But I can say that usually, based on how it went before everything, people would just be like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, you just took me on like a neon acid trip, intimate, weird, dark place. And I'm like, cool, good.
Yeah.
With this protagonist, I was interested in it not having a happy ending. That felt important to explore this time. So
definitely. Well, that's what I said. I think it's just really timely and coincidental, but also not, because these are human conditions. These feelings and emotions are something that actually exists throughout time. They just maybe appear more exacerbated in the moment, that we're in. But your film and the process of your filmmaking really demonstrates how those things are universal. And I really just enjoy the direction you go. I'm a beauty queen, so I love any examination of the culture of beauty as well. And, I'm also a feminist, so I really appreciate a lens through which, women experience the world, and identifying that sometimes that can be dark and isolating and angering, not necessarily a happy ending, as I think a lot of women can understand or relate to.
Oh, yeah.
So I did ask about the film's inspiration, but what about yourselves? What has kind of inspired you all, not only to go into the craft, but, to produce and create projects like, your next upcoming Irish horror? What kind of inspires you? What filmmakers or actors do you look up to? That's a question from the audience, by the way. I'm not that good. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if that's true, but I have been watching a lot of Twin Peaks recently. I have been binging Twin Peaks like there is no tomorrow, and it has been giving me so much joy. I am having a blast watching Twin Peaks. I went on a big rabbit hole.
That's totally you. I totally see that.
Well, and I kind of have, I mean, I've always liked Lynch, but like I've sort of like not, you know, obsessed over him because I have been like, my work has been, I mean, you know, people compare, like that's just inevitable. That's going to happen. So people have like compared my stuff to him before. And that's one reason why I never really like obsessed over his work. But watching Twin Peaks and like just, you know, going down rabbit holes of like IMDBing like what it was like for the actors working with him, and it's just been so much fun. And I'm literally gonna hang up this call and watch more Twin Peaks. That's what I'm having watching it. But yeah, so that's something that's inspiring me right now. And you know, as far as like the Irish horror movie that we're working on, yeah, I'll let Campbell talk about it because I am very excited about it, and it's going to be a really fun one for sure.
Yeah. I don't know what to say about the Irish horror other than, just continuing to remember as we get older and life gets harder, inevitably, just continuing to reconnect with the things that we fell in love with first and the reason why we got in it to begin with, because things can, you know, it gets so big and there's so many like capitalistic distractions that are like, the thing that you want to make is not worth making unless it is contributing to something, you know, some like climb or some like monetary gain or some driving thing that is not you. And so I think that, we've just decided to try and make something more bigger and more ambitious than we've ever tried to do before. And we have these wonderful phone calls where it's like, great, we break out our notebooks and it's like, this scene sucks. What do we do now? And it's a real gift to just be able to, in your art and your career, to not have to BS around that stuff. I say this to my students all the time. Make the thing you want to make. Like just make the thing you want to make. Just because I'm your teacher doesn't mean I get to tell you what you want to make. And so I'm trying to hold us to, I think we want to hold ourselves to that standard too. It's like, make something beautiful, make it exciting, make it sexy and fun. Like we don't want to work on something boring and nobody wants to see something boring. So let's make something for pleasure and just see what happens.
Yes, I love that. I'm here for the make something for pleasure. Beautiful. I love that. Definitely. Yeah, so I guess well, I don't think I have any more audience questions. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about the future. You know, you mentioned that you were looking forward to working on this horror Irish film, which I'm all here for. But tell us, what other things are you looking forward to, maybe in the bigger picture, for your careers, maybe, you know, upcoming in the next year or two? What are some things you're looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to going on a vacation. You know, I'm gonna after this, I wrap this feature in May. I'm like, I gotta go run away to Arizona or something, and just go spend some time in the desert, and you know, not be Lane Marie the filmmaker for a minute. I think that's one really valuable thing that I've gained from COVID is, you know, I asked myself leading up to the pandemic, like, who am I when I'm not working? And I wasn't really able to answer that until I was literally forced to stop working. And, you know, now I'm in this place where, and I've realized it all along the way, but especially now where I'm just like, oh man, I'm just not going to be any good if my life isn't like rich. You know, if I'm not like taking in content when I have the capacity for it, or I'm not observing people in the street, or I'm not like going and just looking at pretty things in a store. Like, just, it's so important to constantly like fill your tank up, because you're not going to be able to like have a good output that's really like fulfilling if you're not doing that. So yeah, I realize that I need to go on a vacation soon, and that's something I'm looking forward to.
Yes. Fill your cup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You can't tell stories unless you live stories.
Yeah.
So that sounds really great. Yeah, not unlike what Le Marie is talking about. I'm starting to gather camping equipment, and I think I want to go on a big, long cross-country camping trip and end up somewhere over in there. You're on this side on my side.
I'm on this side, my side. Yeah.
Come on over, baby.
I'm coming. I'm going to camp across the country and go hang out and
we'll shoot something while you're here.
Make something.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I definitely encourage, I mean, no matter what anybody says, you know, I'll always encourage people to work where they are. But, you know, taking vacations to, you know, and even working somewhere else sometimes gives you a great perspective. And, you know, that's my whole career has been traveling to somewhere else. So I totally understand both sides of the coin. Stay put and move around a lot. Yes, definitely. Well, I think this has been a really great conversation. I just want to know again, you know, what advice would you give to our audience or people out there watching us, to filmmakers, to young women, to actors, to people all over the country? You know, what's the thought or something you want to leave them with?
Oh, I say this all the time, but Annie Dillard says, the way you spend your life is the way you spend your days. What we are doing with this hour and this one is what we are doing. And so just living inside your life and inside the hours and inside the days, because there is no, when I get over this hump, then I'm going to start living my life. Like we're doing it. It's happening live. And yeah, that can just, be pleasurable.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh man, I really don't think I can top that. I think that takes the cake, and I definitely couldn't agree more. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah.
It's always beneficial to do things like this because it reminds you of the love, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And that's a great message, you know, do it now. There's nothing to wait for. And no matter what it is, make it and see what happens. Definitely. Well, once again, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you all. Just one last time, give a shout out, share your social media, let people know where they can follow you, share your website, either put it in the comment section, or if you want to shout it out one more time, you know, just let us know. But we definitely want to say thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you for sharing your work with us and allowing it to be on the platform for other people to see. And we just hope that everybody continues to watch the film and share it and give you guys, you know, love.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate it. Always a pleasure hanging out with you and seeing you. And so glad to see you're doing well.
Yes, right back at you. Cyber hugs. Cyber hugs. Wakanda forever.
Love it.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll hope you tune in next time. Bye. I don't know.